It's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. And we're back for another good old-fashioned fondant cake tutorial. I must share this fondant that I'm now using. Now you guys know, if you've been watching my channel, I am a satin ice girly, but because the bulk barn that's right beside me doesn't always seem to have satin ice, but they do have this other brand that I am all about right now. The brand is called Virgin Ice, and this is not a sponsored video by any means, so you know that this is fully my truth. Now I know that in past when I've recommended satin ice to some of you, you mentioned that because of the humidity in wherever you're living and the climate that you're living in, that it doesn't really work that well for you. So keep in mind, I live in British Columbia in Canada. I really like this Virgin Ice fondant. Now, it's not that satin ice doesn't do the job for me as well, but there are two things that are notably different about each brand. Which brand of fondant that you choose is really dependent on two things, I think. So obviously, one, the climate, and two, how you like to specifically decorate your cakes. In my case, I find that satin ice is a little bit firmer, so I do have to end up adding a little bit of shortening to it. But what's nice about that is I can control the firmness of that fondant. So if I really need it super malleable, then I add a lot of that shortening in there. And when I need it a little bit more firm, I really don't have to do too much. Now with Virgin Ice, what I've noticed is it's really good for covering cakes because it just feels a little bit more like it has some elasticity in there and it's a bit softer, so I don't have to add as much shortening. So this particular cake, as you saw from the thumbnail, is going to be a Hot Wheels themed cake. I really wanted to make sure that the layers were going to stay really nicely. So yes, I could have crumb coated this in American buttercream or Italian meringue buttercream, as those are my favorite, but it was pretty warm during this time when I made this cake, so I wanted it to be extra solid, so I went with a chocolate ganache on the outside. This helps keep things a little bit more crisp in my opinion and a little bit more solid. This wheel portion is going to be going on the bottom, and I want to make sure that everything is going to sit inlay, so I'm cutting off this top piece of fondant. Because this is black, I actually can use this fondant over again as long as I mix things in really well. I know some people kind of throw away that top piece, but I do not like to waste. If you're Canadian, or maybe they might also have this in the States too, you might know where all of these straws are from. I personally do not like drinking through paper straws because everything gets so soggy, and I'm not a super fast drinker, so I need to drink from a metal straw. Anyway, they're from Tim Hortons, and I use them as cake supports now. After making sure that all of my cake supports were firmly in place and that they're all fairly leveled because you don't want anything tipping over, I'm putting down a little bit more melted ganache in there so that everything stays together really well. Don't forget to put on another cake board and make sure that you put a center dowel in there and really stab that into the cake drum so that that thing is not going to move anywhere. In order to make this look like a wheel, I looked at a lot of inspiration photos and I chose something that I know I could make fairly symmetrical and fairly easily. That tool that you saw me using earlier is a pastry cutter, and what I love about it is when you spread it out, it makes sure that everything is super even, so you really don't have to worry. Now, the only little worry is if you put it back together before you're actually done indenting, then it can be a little bit tricky to realign everything properly, so don't do that. I used a technique in which I kind of scored everything just very lightly first, and then I went back in with some different caking tools to really do those indentations. If you try to do it too hard the first time, if you make a mistake, that's kind of it, and then you kind of have to re-smooth out your fondant. Sometimes that can work, but sometimes you'll get elephant skin where everything just looks really wrinkly and things are too dry. This is again why choosing the right brand of fondant for you and your caking style is paramount, because you're going to know what's going to work best. And in this instance, like I told you, Virgin Ice is a little bit more malleable, so I was able to get a really good indentation on here and take my time with it because I think it had just a little bit more moisture in there, so it gave me that time to correct little mistakes but also give me a really good indentation style. And of course, is it a fondant cake tutorial if I do not whip out my clothing steamer? You can get a cake steamer, you can get a clothing steamer, whatever you want to call it. Just use that steamer to get any excess cornstarch off of your fondant. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this, but when you're rolling out your fondant, you can use a little bit of cornstarch on the surface so that things do not stick. Very sorry if you are new to cake decorating and I didn't mention that in the first place. I could have easily edited out that portion where I was putting the checkered pattern on the bottom, but I wanted to show you that anytime you make a mistake in cake decorating, especially when it's fondant, you can fix it and it's not the end of the world. So what happened there was I originally thought that it would look good to have those checkered patterns all the way around, but I felt like it was too close to the other black portion of the tire. So it was like too much black altogether, making it a confusing design. So instead, I decided to move it up to the top. The thing to remember as well with cake decorating is there really are no rules. Like I used to watch my friend cake decorate and think, oh, I would never think to use that tool for that or use that tool for that. And once I kind of got out of that mindset that you don't need to specifically use specific tools for things and just do what works and just do what is going to look good, you're going to be a significantly better cake decorator that can just think on their feet. I'm now creating a strip to go along the edge of that cake board that was still kind of showing what I originally tried to cover up with the checkered pattern. I'm now going to cover it up with this piece here. Now, when you're making edible ribbons like this, it can be tricky because if you pull on that too hard or if you don't make sure that everything stays in place while you're cutting with that pastry cutter, it can get really, really wonky. So don't worry if you're very frustrated with that process. It's normal. Once you're able to do it, you're going to always be able to do it. But it is about having the right mix of cornstarch on the surface so that things don't stick, but also making sure it's malleable enough so that things don't crack and break. And would it even be a Hot Wheels cake if we didn't have some form of flames on here? Admittedly, these flames turn out really, really thick, but the reason is a good one, but I should have prepared better in advance. I wanted some flames that were standing up, and if you don't really have time to let your fondant pieces dry, you kind of got to go thicker so it can stand up on its own with a little bit of support with a popsicle stick or a lollipop stick, whatever you want to use, but the thicker the better. If you go too thin, things are going to flop over and it will never stand up in time for your event. When I get to this stage in the cake decorating process, it is always a beautiful moment because I feel like now I can just focus on all of those details. So I'm adding in a little Hot Wheels track just using some orange fondant that I created by mixing yellow and red together. The less I have to dye fondant, by the way, the better. Can I just say how much I love my edible printer? It's honestly one of the best edible printers I've ever used, and it really doesn't clog on me. I haven't been using it, honestly, to the best of its ability, meaning I should be printing things every so often, every couple of days, just to make sure that that ink doesn't dry out and to make sure that things look really nice and saturated. But I've left it for an extended period of time, and it still does the job, and that's why I appreciate it so much. Adhering the edible image is really easy, and things don't wrinkle at all. I love these icing sheets. You can check out this video in the upper right hand corner if you want to know all about this printer that I keep raving about. And I also added this little loop-de-loop because is it a Hot Wheels cake without that? So there is the finished product. It ended up being served pretty much right away and it fed a lot of people. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of this Sweetie Fam. Right now, I am uploading whenever I can, but I do hope that that's going to be at a much higher frequency. As I said in my last video, I thank you guys so much for all of your support. Bye.